Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. It's Hal Sparks Mornings, Mega Worldwide. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, etc., etc., etc. It's Friday, and there's a lot to cover today. Just when everybody thought they were going to be able to dodge this, it's actually more important a topic than it has been in months. You're welcome. And by the way, I'm going to bring on right now our dear friend Rob Glenn from Root Design in Chicago. There he is. Hold on one second. I have to shut my
Hello,
door.
hello.
Hello. So,
How are we all doing today? Happy Friday.
where most of us are doing pretty darn well. I got very busy this morning, so
Okay.
I'll show everybody what set me off. As is always something that sets me off, as you know. And there's always some little fire to put out, but I'm always looking for the sort of big picture stuff. I would argue that
Uh-huh.
emergencies are the thing of focus, and crisis is the things of wisdom. And if you have a crisis or something extraordinary that's not an emergency, meaning someone needs CPR, but you have a crisis where someone needs an overall health makeover, that itself requires wisdom and a little bit of pulling back from the sort of laser pointer media that we're in right now that allows everybody's I think we've passed the cat brain or the lizard brain thing, and now we're to cat brain. I think a lot of people have cat brain right now, which is just following that laser pointer wherever it's going. You know, like a lot of people are sitting there in front of
Yes.
their TVs doing what my cat does when there's a bird outside the window going right. And so I don't know if I've ever seen a cat do that, but it's pretty spectacular. So the thing that stood out to me, and this was specific to what you and I have been talking about, is whoops, why is that lady on my thing? I don't want her. Hold on. There's always something funny to this thing. Let's see. I have to sometimes reset my little window because it becomes a jerk. But there is, yeah, I'll go back to here.
While you're doing that, Ken TV said that he saw in Elk Grove, Illinois, which is close to here in Chicago, that there was a robot lawnmower being used at an intersection.
Uh
That's
huh.
commercial robotic mowing is definitely an industry that's already established,
Oh,
and you're going to start seeing a lot more of it.
the Disney budget alone for their parks, and like think of all the uh, golf courses. Think of all the people who mow golf courses, and this goes to part of the immigrant purge we've seen, and what I was talking about with Operation Wetback having more to do with tractors. This is the same shit. We'll get into that, but this is the thing that set
Yeah,
me off. This,
It's Elk Grove Village. Sorry, I just read what he said, but it's Elk Grove Village.
yeah. So
Sorry.
let me see if I can shrink this down where it can fit a little better. This. So this is an article in on Axios that came up today, and or maybe late last night or yesterday, but it has to do with Mark Kelly put together as a tee up for him very possibly running for president or vice president or head of everything, or whatever job he might want in the next administration. And he's a good guy to do it. I would say he's like I think when it comes to people who can focus on a task and get it done in extreme circumstances and not lose sight of the big picture and stuff, astronauts are particularly um, uh, you know chosen for those skills because they can go from
Hmm.
it's like deep sea diving. It can go from zero to fucked in about 2 seconds. And I'm like I've always been impressed by you know how what a big fan I am of like First Man and those kind of movies, and it really does teach you something about like dealing with an emergency and keeping your cool in a circumstance that is extraordinary. And astronauts are a great example of that, and they're great movies to watch.
Absolutely.
The and the astronaut is, or sorry, the Martian, that is one of those movies where it goes from the acute crisis to the wisdom of plotting a long term strategy. So it shows both of those mindsets. It's why it's such a great book and why it's such a great movie. Is it shows you both those mindsets. So I
It's
gotta say,
also it also
yeah,
goes from that, then it goes back to the acute problem. And
Yes,
then it shows the idea of problem solving, and maybe the most important part is the order by which you accomplish the things you need to accomplish.
that's right.
Um, yeah, so like these like Maslow's pyramid kind of stuff where you like, I got to do these two things first. Once I settle that, then I go on to the next and the next and the next.
That's correct. So Mark Kelly puts out, and I'm gonna, and I broke this down myself as well. Hold on, let me go back to here real quick, and I'll bring it up. He calls it AI for America as his plan, which is you know, I that's cool. It's a terrific, title that you're gonna do. But he created this whole like workbook breakdown of what this is. There's an executive summary about it and yada yada. Like it's a full-on plan that his office has put together. But the primary parts of it were these recommendations that came up, which are, I think, the crucial and most useful parts of the whole thing. And let's see if I can spring this up without losing quality on this. Okay. So the first one was establishing an AI Horizon Fund. And this is the idea that all these companies are benefiting from the infrastructure of the United States and electricity and all this kind of stuff and universities and all this. So they should kick into a big fund that will further, educate people so that they'll have the workers they need and all this kind of stuff. There were similar things around NASA that relate to our kind of residual STEM stuff in the United States. And a lot of this has to do with the what and not the how, because I think this is a broad plan. And I dove into what I would consider the how of it almost immediately. I'm like, so we'll show you what I came up with, and then I used the AI tools that I have to like draft it into a format that people can understand. As I'm like, okay, here's what I see, and this is what I so write me up an example doc so that I can show that to everybody. My original idea, basically using AI as an assistant, which goes to where my brain immediately went. So the second was this explore innovative methods for the frontier AI companies to pay into the fund. Okay, these are primarily the same goal. This is a sub goal of this one, but whatever. Okay, and then this is preparing and protecting workers in the age of AI. I understand the language around this about protecting workers because it is the same language we have used since the industrial age, dealing with robber barons and the like, and the supplication and the replacement of workers and subversion of workers' rights and all that kind of stuff that we're used to talking about. And this is a wholly different challenge. So the language is inadequate to the circumstance, but ballpark, we're there. And then I'll get your take on this in a second. And so we must have in mind workers at every stage of the career. It's a great document. It's actually like I went through as much as I could of it this morning. I got up at like the cats had me up all night, and I woke up at 4:30, and I literally had to like fuck it and just got up and And so one of the things that they are talking about a lot is what's called upskilling and reskilling, which almost sounds like upskilling and res killing if you misread it. Like it's not the best words because it looks like it's more killing than anything else. Opportunities, utilizing the proven union apprenticeship model, community college courses, and public-private partnerships. This is obviously where they're going to go from a governmental standpoint. These are the tools available currently. This is what you're going to use. And then equipping students to augment and expand learning opportunities with AI, reimagine credentialing and certification standards to reflect the realities of AI use in the workplace and expand accelerator programs. And we'll talk about accelerationism and the AI doomer crowd in a minute as well, because you and I haven't had a talk about this since the Charlie Kirk shooting and the relation of this. So here's his recommendations. Upskilling and res-killing. This is domestic supply chains, which is, again, already in place. And Arizona, the reason it matters with Mark Kelly is because of Arizona. Arizona is the center of the AI, like, growth boom, largely because while there's not a lot of water, which is necessary, there's also almost zero environmental problems. It's not earthquake prone. It's not hurricane, tornado prone. There's very little like extraordinary weather or geological circumstance that will fuck up the factory, that will make the little needle on the vinyl skip when they're making super chips, which are, on a micron level. All right. New credentials and
It's also
yeah.
something I never hear anybody talk about, but it's not humid there, which is
Yes.
important for
Yes.
humans.
That's one of the reasons why in a lot of these places they go to like super sub-zero. The other reason for that is that there's not a lot of water vapor and other stuff moving around. That at those levels, it creates close to a vacuum because of it. So a drier area makes that also easier. Requires more power, hence nuclear, and it requires more cooling, hence shipping in water in controlled environments. Believe me, no one in Phoenix will have a problem getting hot water in a couple of years because the problem will be getting rid of the steam from the function of like using it on these things to cool these server, farms and shit like that. Okay. Federal leadership, support disrupted workers, which again is another thing entirely, I think is more based on people's knee-jerk fear than it is on the reality that they're going to be facing. Improve data collection and gap analysis for better job placement, which again, data is everything. Data, data, data. I cannot make bricks without clay, said Sherlock Holmes. So, real quick, I just want to grab your thoughts on these recommendations, starting with the upskilling and the res killing.
Yeah. Okay.
Rob, Glenn,
So
yeah.
first of all, somebody's been listening to our show.
Yes, they
We've been talking
have.
about this the
Right.
entire time.
Yes.
So just overall, like because I didn't read this until this morning as you showed it to me or just mentioned you were going
Yeah.
to talk about it. So just as my first sort of blush on this, I find it quite fascinating that, we have this like massive problem in the US of income inequality. The
Mm-hmm.
tax structure is such that it's really just very difficult to try to get the rich to pay for the poor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but there's such a sort of consolidation now of the of the top line money, like the upper crust money going into AI, that it
Right.
actually like causes this really interesting moment where the AI problem is so acute that it might be the perfect vessel to like change the effectively like the funding policies
Yes.
for these situations.
Right. And the
And
cost
this
analysis
thing
of them. So the service
exactly.
is much easier to implement and give to a lot more people. And I'll get to how one of my theories on
Yeah.
how we using what he's
So
talking about, this Horizon Fund, to get there. But please continue.
so we get all like sort of into this nasty soup of bullshit where we talk about the rich and the poor and taxes and all this stuff. AI is a very specific problem, and
Yeah.
we've mentioned this before, where or it creates a very specific problem where it effectively eliminates its own customers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so when we first started talking about this, we talked about the idea that it should be, if they're going to eliminate their own customers, it's actually imperative on them
Mm-hmm.
to find a path for their customers to be able to pay for their service, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a really interesting thing. And that's encapsulated in what in now Mark Kelly's beginnings of using what I would call slightly older language, like language of what we know,
Mm-hmm.
which is a fund where the Horizon Fund. So we're creating a fund for the future, and then we figure out innovative methods to pay into the fund, which is effectively tax them
Right.
somehow. Like but they're not taxes; they're essentially AI companies funding the future of their own making. Like they're making the future. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that also we talk about the top 7 to 10 companies effectively pulling the economy along because of AI. So it's
Yeah.
really on them to deal with it, right?
Yes.
Um, so uh, then we can get into a bunch of other stuff. Let me go back to
Yeah. So let's start
so the
with
upskilling, reskilling, all of that stuff. So go ahead. Let's start
right.
with what? Go ahead.
Yeah. So the upskilling and reskilling, I think, is a in terms of people's understanding of it, is going to be like train workers and have them sit down in front of a computer and go, oh my goodness, and ask it questions, and it will do that while someone sits over their shoulder going, what do you do for a living and how do you do it? Like, that's how most people
Yeah.
learn. That's how people, when there's new tax policy, as an assistant accountant, go to a class and sit there and watch as somebody explains the new tax law to them. And then when they implement the new software on how to implement this, there's a person walking around while they're at the terminal going, you have a problem? And that's how we've done it in the past. The difference now is that AI itself can teach you it on its own. The question is this sort of inside the United States, outside the United States, who gets access to these things and who doesn't? Because if you just put it online and you go, here's the America AI that you can learn to use or whatever, basically every user in the world will dive in and burn down your functional systems. And that's why you need on site something or others, whether it's schools and community colleges, or I would argue, AI libraries, which effectively become like AI gyms, where you go there and you can either come in, use the raw form and learn something. If it's trained specifically for a job or something, you can go, hey, there's a class on Wednesday that, you can use this AI that's trained to teach you on whatever, and it's free, but you got to be there to use it. You got to be in the room to use it so that you're not burning money teaching, I don't know, the population of China how to use the system, because it requires compute power, it requires tokens, it requires effort. And if you're going to pay for this and fund it and build the thing, you got to limit who can use it. Otherwise, it will, especially with this kind of a tool, you'll just basically be setting fire to money and it will never become
Yeah.
functional. So
So
here,
could I
yeah,
like somewhat derail you?
sure, as per
So
usual.
like as you talk about, so you started with what do we do with it? How do we retrain the workers?
Yeah.
And I think actually the place to start in this conversation is actually before that. And that's
Mm-hmm.
people's biggest fear about it becoming a reality to begin with, which is
Okay.
where's the power coming from? Where's the
Sure.
water coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's possible that before we even have a system that we can use, that system in a lot of people's minds have already destroyed the earth, right?
Right.
So, and I see like, what about power? I saw a comment about that we have trouble like dealing with taxes. Like how are we going to fund this? So the first thing is that's the kind of the point is
Mm-hmm.
it's a new thing and it basically needs to solve its own problems. So the first step might be to require them to solve their own problems
Mm-hmm.
as they make them. And it's
Right.
on them. It's not on the government to solve the water problem and the power problem. It's on them. So
Right.
I mentioned this before we were online on the thing, but I heard a really interesting take on the power problem being that if you use AI as like this moonshot kind of concept where we want to go to the moon, but the whole point of going to the moon is we solve all these problems and then those problems filter down into society.
Yeah.
AI, if they're required to solve the power problem, then if they solve that problem solves a lot of other problems for
Yes.
humanity. And
It's my favorite thing. It's the hoverboard fallacy.
exactly. So now instead of like doom and gloom, like, holy shit, our power's going to go off because these super centers are sucking it all away,
Mm-hmm.
think of it differently in that if they're required to make their own power in a way, they can't do it with fossil fuels. It's
Right.
not going to work. There's not enough
Right.
of them. There's not enough fossil fuels to power the thing that they think that they want to make, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where you start going is you go into like fission, you go into nuclear power, you go into essentially like much cleaner, more abundant and cheaper, much cheaper forms of power creation.
Right.
So let's just articulate the idea that this first step of this is that all the money in AI should be solving the power problem so that AI can continue to exist.
Yes.
And if they do that, you solve problems like desalination. You
Mm-hmm.
solve problems like
Right.
you basically wipe out the oil and gas industry because if you've got enough power to generate for that, you've got enough power to generate for everything else, like cooling and humidity control and all that stuff.
Right.
So that's the first step, I think, is that I think it's really important to isolate this problem into like for it to exist, it needs to solve a problem that will solve a lot of other problems.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
So
then
yeah,
so go ahead.
I completely agree. Cosign. Also, on top of that, I will add that it's a matter of, and that's already in process. What they think they're going to solve
Yes,
it with
exactly.
largely is nuclear and micronuclear, perhaps thorium, that kind of stuff. And that's why Trump is speed permitting all of this stuff. It's not an original idea. And as a matter of fact, there's something equivalent to it that the UK was doing, that Norway was doing around their tech. Is that you think of all these quote unquote socialist countries where everybody has said, we want to have these benefits technologically. So they just allocate parts of their taxes to handle this in the same way that, like, a town decides it would be great for tourism and the city if we had a stadium, and they throw all this money at the stadium thing. Afterwards, after a certain window, the stadium will have to pay for its own water and all this kind of stuff, but the startup costs will cover for a while because the secondary benefits are so enormous. And we'll get to my
Exactly.
plan for regional
So
and city AI along with that, but please continue.
so now let me articulate my second problem that needs to be solved before we even
Mm-hmm.
get to how we use it. And that
Sure.
is who owns it? Like what's the ownership of the data that that the AI is created from? AI
Right.
can't exist without our data. And so I think I don't see anything about this in his thing, but once you solve the power problem and AI can exist, the next thing you
Mm-hmm.
have to do
Mm-hmm.
is understand property rights or intellectual property rights and
Right.
how it okay. So if you were to articulate the idea that they would not exist without all of our stuff, all
Yes.
of our writing, all of our
That's
pictures,
right.
all of our everything,
Yes.
then that changes the financial dynamic and the ownership
Correct.
of what it is, right? I think that's incredibly important at this moment
Mm-hmm.
because if you were to, this is just like totally off the wall, but if you were to basically say that AI had to pay everybody that used it instead of everybody that used it paid it,
Yes.
right? Like it basically has, it's kind of like if you had solar panels on your house and you were pushing power back into the grid, the power company needs to pay you for it.
Sure.
The same concept could be true of AI.
Sure.
But no matter what the solution is, you have to solve the intellectual property problem because they can't just like move forward in time scot free,
Mm-hmm.
having used all this stuff
Right.
without some cost
Well, we'll
for
get
it.
to that too. Yes, we'll get to that as well because there has been Meta is signing a contract with news organizations and the like for the use of their
Right.
stuff, and that is clearly um, uh, you know, a, a normalized response. We were kicking around this, and I think this was people's primary thing was like the art that was being stolen early. That's the least of it. Like stealing art styles that are basically copied upon copied upon copied style wise over the years, whether it's photography being the newest one, and Renaissance painting and cave paintings being early, borrowing that style and passing it on just like a human does. And we've talked about this, like if a person learns from a book or an AI learns from a book, it's the same thing as far as
Yes, I believe
what
that too.
the cost of that book, right? But now it's really about like research and other stuff and secondary research on top of that, which is by and large has always been in the realm of free. The value of it, beyond I guess some pharmaceuticals in proprietary medicine, physics, medicine, most of these things have been like the issue humanity has had, and this gets to my concepts for how we implement what Mark Kelly is talking about, because I'm here to help, and I'm named after a computer, so I have special privileges. Is that there? I always go back to Quincy, as you do, and most people don't know
Okay.
this, but Jack Klugman was responsible for not only rape kits being present in most hospitals as a standard order, and a bill that Orrin Hatch was running against, on what were called like orphan diseases, stuff that were so small that they affect a lot of people, but not enough statistically to warrant funding or schools going to find a cure for them. And so he did an episode of his show on Tourette's. He did a show on like a rare form of epilepsy that there were no cures for. The point being that it led to this person's death, and that's how he found out. But the point was to drive attention to these things. And he eventually went to Orrin Hatch's office, and Orrin Hatch became a co-sponsor because of Jack Klugman going to his fucking office to make sure that government money goes to these diseases that aren't getting attention. Okay, so like that in and of itself, incredibly valuable. But what was it based on? The idea that medical experimentation is incredibly expensive, that there's a limited amount of resources, there's a limited amount of money, and there's a limited amount of doctors and nurses and techs and biology labs and stuff that can put their attention on this kind of thing. And most of them are trying to figure out the big ones: malaria, AIDS, cancer, those kind of things. That's what, and the flu that kills 70,000 Americans every year and has a body count higher than, a lot of other diseases if you stack it every year, right? They're going after that. So of course they're going to go, we'd love to cure these smaller diseases. We'd love to, cure paralysis on people like Christopher Reeve and the like. But the possibility of doing it, the expenditure is incredible. And it's just not possible at this point. Whereas AI is now making that, possible on a scale. It's filling in that flood of background workers and thinkers that were missing from the equation. That you can have all the minds and all the studies and all the biological assessments that were done fighting cancer, and kind of to your point earlier, you could take all that data, and it might also apply to these other diseases that are either tangentially attached to them or that run alongside them. Sort of the occupational hazards of having a particular disease, the sort of sidecar ailments that a lot of people who have this disease also have this disease. And if we can't cure this disease yet, if we could solve the smaller disease, we could make their quality of life better until we do, right? So these are things that everybody just fucking shrugged. They just went, that'd be lovely, but we just don't have the people. We don't have the money. We don't have the labs. We don't have the thinking power. The 24-hour grind is already eaten up. So this is a situation where there's this new army of people. It goes beyond outsourcing what the work people do, going, okay, I do this job, and I'm going to take this part of my job and give it to AI now. So I'm doing less, and I'm more productive maybe because it's doing it, and I can focus on the stuff because I have a limited amount of willpower, energy, awareness during the day, right? That's how most people are thinking of it. And I'm thinking in terms of, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and certainly in the chat room, I'd love to hear from you guys about this. I'm thinking that our focus is habitual. We have been thinking about this because we're thinking about this in the way that all technology has worked. A forklift replaces 4 guys having to lift something heavy. And this is completely different from that, because we're still it's operating beyond the sort of physics of normalcy. And that what we really should be focusing on is, how does AI allow you to do stuff you were never able to do? That it was always, we wrote off, and we do this in work and in study and in life all the time. We automatically edit goals and edit possibility based on a reasonable assessment of the resources that we have and the time we have in the day. And so we've always done it. There's habitually things that we do where we're like, you wouldn't even bring up, like, I want to learn to play piano because you've got so much shit to do and laundry and kids and all the whatever on top of that, that the idea that you're going to sit down every day and do that, you just said, fuck it. Like, I'm not going to do that. Part of it is, okay, well, what if I took these things that I used to do that I don't need to do because they don't add to my life, add that to AI, and now I can learn to play piano. That's the assessment and sidecar learning. The other thing is if you want to start a company and you can't afford a bunch of employees, you want to eventually, but right now you can't. What if you had 10 magical employees in agentic AI or the available stuff? And now you can compete and start something in a way that only, and this is why the Trumpies hate it, that previously only the second generation rich could ever do. So, sorry, I ate into that point, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think what you're speaking to maybe is like, if you retrain workers, what do you retrain them to do?
Yes.
And maybe the fear is that if we take all the jobs, there's no jobs left. But your point is that when you take all the jobs, there's new jobs left. And the key is transferring your
I'm going
effort
further
into
than that.
those other
So
jobs.
let me
Okay.
clarify. Let me clarify because I'm going further than that. What I'm saying is not like new jobs will come from the jobs that we get rid of. I'm saying there are jobs we never had because they're too fucking dangerous to start with, and we automatically have never had them because like the idea that you could at some point farm lava. I'm using this as an extreme example, but if you're using like
Yeah, I
an
get what you're
energy
saying.
source where you could create a canal where you could drive a natural lava flow that always happens through a system where you could create a constant steam engine built on this, kind of the way people put a fucking like take like a piece of a windmill, break it down, put it in water, and create a mill through the natural flow of water. But you do this on a massive scale with lava. But you could never do it because no human being is going to get close enough to it where you even can experiment about this. But at some point, you could create robots that would be resilient enough to do at least the tangential part of this, to be able to move close enough to it where you might wear them out and they might melt eventually, but they don't care. And nobody need,
Yeah.
it's like
So we're
if we could have done
yeah.
coal mining without ever giving anyone black lung. That's kind of the zone of things. That there are a lot of things that we just don't think about doing because there are only a certain number of hours in the day. There's only a certain amount of interest in it. It just, we write it off as impossible before we even entertain the idea. And I think that's where we need to shift our focus in the realm of like open-minded goal-setting possibility. And maybe I'm only thinking this way because my birthday is next week and I set my goals, my New Year's resolutions on my birthday every year, which I recommend for everyone.
Sure.
Does that make
We're
sense?
speaking, I think we're saying, yeah, we're saying the same thing. I think
Yeah.
what this idea that like nothing is left in the future,
Hmm.
and your point is there's unknowns in the future that are all there, ready to be
Yes.
taken.
Yeah.
And so even if, this theory of like, well, we can get into this, but the idea that AI will just on its own go mine on unobtainium and make something out of unobtainium
Right.
that never existed before, that's far off actually, and
Yeah.
that's something else that I want to sort of talk about is that AI is framed as the future, but it's actually built on the past, and it can't be built on the future because the future hasn't happened yet. And so the idea of it inventing it's not inventing anything at this time. It's effectively
Right.
optimizing things that already happened, or it's built off of it can only exist in the past and tell you something now in the present.
Right.
So what we I think what we need to educate people on is the shift of like how we think about work as, in this case, like the creativity of it, the pointing it in the right direction, the curation of the concept, like choosing what to work on next.
Hmm.
And AI is not just going to go do that automatically. Like that, we're in control of our own future. So if you kind of go back up the list that I'm talking about, if AI doesn't have enough power to exist, then it can't exist because
Hmm.
there's not enough power. So I'm getting that, like, it's not going to destroy the world because it sucks away all the power. Like, we'll just shut the switch off and say we need it to like go heat people's homes. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if
Yes.
it runs out of power, then we don't have power and it can't exist.
Yeah.
So in order for it to continue to exist, you it is a job of a number of people, using AI or not, to figure out how to make power cheaper when we run out of gas or when we run out
That's
of oil,
right.
excuse me.
And it will, and the funny thing
So
is, it will come to the same conclusions that Democrats have been pushing for since fucking Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the White House. That there are that like minimally obtrusive and environmentally conscious solutions will be the primary one because they last the longest and are the most worthwhile. Renewables, like AI in its infinite wisdom, and I mean that in both in the ironic and the specific, will basically say like renewables have to be the way you do it because you at some
right.
point in the year 10,700 we will run out of whatever the fuck you're burning for fuel. And so it's got to think in those terms and it will go, well, why not go there immediately? And all these first principles assholes around Elon Musk and stuff know this is true. Elon Musk himself has been fighting to get like more the solar subsidies put back in against the Trump administration's war on renewables, not because he gives a shit, but because he knows that, and everybody around him knows that there are only really three ways to guarantee you won't be at the effect of, in the same way that they're putting these factories in Arizona so that the chips aren't damaged by a fucking tornado or an earthquake or humidity. The same thing is true of like energy sources. If the Saudis, which they have, Saudis have given like AI bots within their country citizenship but no rights. And what they do is they tax them as citizens at 100%. And what that means is they're basically creating crypto mines. So what they do is they create an AI bot that mines crypto and they tax it at 100% so that they aren't violating international trade rules on creating on mining crypto and all this kind of stuff in terms of using it as a currency in other countries. There's all kinds of like shit about this. But the point is that they know the Saudis, if they decided to jump in on this and went, we're going to drive the price of oil up again because we have plenty and that's what everybody's running their AI server farms on, you'll be at the effect of it. You'll be on the hook. The price and cost of your AI function, which will be every fucking thing, will go through the roof and they'll have control over you. So they'll go renewables always better. Like that's what AI will eventually come to no matter
So
what because it's an obvious logical
yes,
conclusion.
I think the sort of key concept there is like you don't have to go somewhere else to get it.
Hmm.
You can, if you can generate power with what you have in your country, then you don't have to go outside. There's a comment,
Yeah.
Shazam 1971, the poor take the risk. You want public funds used for AI, Hal, question mark. No difference in AI business model and combination of the nuke industry and politics of lying who benefits. So I read that because like Mark Kelly's uh, proposal here is exactly the opposite of using public funds. He's
Right.
saying that the
Yes.
AI industry should pay for
Right.
itself, not the public.
Yes.
So,
Effectively,
like,
a tax.
that's a clear
A
distinction.
yes, and a tax system, anyways, that benefits us long term. That comes from that benefits the society that where you're kind of talking about it, like it pays you to use it in that regard because of like the inversion of how like intellectual property works and all that kind of stuff is another pocket. But what he's saying is create a fund, and with that fund, you create a substructure that benefits every American because they are benefiting from this. And it's kind of like the intellectual property rights rules in the United States, which are stronger than anywhere in the world. And so many people take advantage of the American patent system, Like there's tons of like Chinese owned patents that are really copycats or whatever that they have taken advantage of where the US, because the patent exists in the United States, you don't benefit from that patent being owned in the United States if it's created in the rest of the world. But our government has to fight and to protect it legally. We're on the hook for those patent rights because it's our patent court. And to protect one, we have to protect all of them. We have to protect every single one of them individually. And so it's taken advantage of. There's a version of that with these, like the AI centers, where you want these guys, if they want the benefit of doing it here, where they have the freedom to build something, but they also have, a resilient energy grid and all that kind of stuff, and not an authoritarian government that will force them to make it speak a certain way, which is China's glass ceiling on its AI, then they've got to kick something in. They've got to kick something back to the people. And that's what this Horizon Fund would be about.
Yeah, so in that example, intellectual property is only defended by the country that
Hmm.
maintains the intellectual property. So you can't, if you only have a patent in the US on something, you can only defend your right to hold it in the US or to sell things which use that intellectual property. You don't
Hmm.
have the right to protect yourself in China, let's say, if a Chinese company sold that. And so what they've done over the, in other countries is there's been an attempt to unify, somewhat, it's not great, but unify intellectual property. So you would effectively have to have a patent in every single country. So if
Yeah.
you wanted to defend yourself in the UK, you would need to go get a patent in the UK or the European Union if in country there. That was a consolidation of their IP. So you're always going to struggle with that idea of like, I'm here in the US, I spent the money to develop this, I then want to go sell it in the world. You
Right.
don't have protection in the world unless you've established that somehow in those other countries. And the US can't go to China and say, hey, stop selling that. All they can do is use trade policy
Right.
to say to China, like, we're gonna fine you or somehow like uh, get money out
Right.
of you from tariffs, let's say. That's kind of what Trump's doing in a really ham-handed way.
Right.
Um,
Let me
so
work through right, because I don't want to
go ahead.
like because one of these things that one of the things I've noticed most about like the especially the more philosophical conversations about AI online when we do have podcasts that talk about this stuff is they tend to get into a lot of navel gazing about it, and it's either they're ferociously hyper practical to the point where they're showing you the latest tool and it's useless the next day, or they become like conversations ad absurdum that are like somewhere between utopia and nightmare scenarios, which are, by the way, a big portion of, will at some point, and I'm going to talk about this Monday on Stephanie Miller's show because I'm going to be on there to talk about this kind of like the rationalism attachment to what maybe Tyler Robinson and his crowd think about the future and what may have driven the assassination and maybe attached to some of the shit that you're seeing, and the Claude boys, which are these people who these young men who wake up every day and only do what AI tells them to do. They fed all their information into it, their schedule, all the kind of stuff, and they go, tell me what to do. Like active AI parenting, which is a nightmare scenario, but part of it might keep these assholes from doing something terrible. So I don't know. But that there seem to be this fucking goalposts of awful and great that only really have to do with which team is getting closer to the other. Okay, so here's what I'm suggesting, and I wrote a letter to Mark Kelly's office today, this morning, after reading what he was talking about and what that Horizon Fund should do materially. Okay, this is what I came up with. Let me show you where I started off, and okay. The first one was a free AI training and assessment tool made available through either these companies, like a sort of a student version that you can use. Most it exists anyways, but like the free versions are pretty strong now, so you could kind of do this on your own. But one that's specifically like the government can either sign off on or make available like a slightly better model through this Horizon thing where you're not just operating with whatever the free shit is. Um, that you can basically go through your job, and assess your day and or look at what other assessments have done. In this case, I got a couple of scenarios where a nurse like walks through her day and it follows around, listens to what she's saying in just one day, like what she has to do, follows her charts, all that kind of stuff for a single day, and goes, okay, this is what I can germane from the use of your time and the function of this, and what I can, the slack I can pick up over the course of the day. That, you know, reminders and stuff like that, or things like if you need to be reminded of a medical, like a change out that has to happen, or you change shifts and a person needs to be verbally reminded of something, it will automatically do it for them in that pass off AI that now helps run the office. You know, not foolproof, but the same as we've been hanging charts at the end of people's fucking beds or putting them in a slot by the door. It's a more active version of that. A mechanic that, like in the car, you know, like a lot of cars have digital hookups right now that can tell you what's wear and tear, when something needs, you know, an update, like an oil change or those kind of things, and that can spot extra wear and tear instead of just the date of it and that kind of stuff. And then truck drivers, route optimization, live compliance reminders to let them know, you know, the weight areas that they're heading into a state that has these things, as opposed to just having to know it or check in at a stop on their way in. These kind of things. Okay, so that's just an assessment part of it. This is where this could go. This would help somebody go, here's this will help how it makes your job easier, and this is what it could pick up the slack on your job for, or next level being like, hey, okay, what am I not doing that's possible with my job that I can't physically do, but you could add on, give me something that I haven't even, it would never occur to me. That kind of shit. Okay. So then this is, I call them AI gyms or AI libraries, but these would be like cities in the same way we have public libraries, or in public libraries, which would be, by the way, a great way to get people to go back to the library. We already have computers in there anyways. Get people in there that could sit down and at libraries have these kind of like extension classes that have to do with broadening your abilities at work. And we already, since we already have the infrastructure of libraries already there, pilot them there. There's two more, and then I'll get your response on this. In schools, this is already happening. OpenAI and Claude, Anthropic, have done this Claude for EDU and OpenAI for EDU, where they're helping, you know, follow students' progress, look at their homework, and personalize the response to whether this kid seems to be getting something, and help them along the way, helping the teacher focus on every student in their class without having to memorize the successes and failures on a personal level of every kid, and can kind of flag them to keep an eye out on, like, okay, this person's really accelerating. Maybe they could help teach the other kids this thing with you, an assistant teacher, those kind of things, because they explain it really well. This happened to my son, by the way, because the teacher in one of his classes does this thing where they call somebody to the board and make them explain the problem that they've been talking about. And if that person does it well, they don't have to do a pop quiz. The idea is being that if any random kid can explain it, then they're pretty much all on board. There'd be a more, you know, a wider version of this. By the way, my kid was so smart that they got to skip 2 pop quizzes because he went up to the board and nailed it. So, but that's it. Okay. Then citizen-focused AI services. And this is the key one, too, that has to do with my secondary idea of local AI for cities and towns, which I also drafted up an idea on because I'm nerding the fuck out of this shit right now, is that when people, and some banks are already doing this a little bit in business banking accounts, but auto-categorizing your receipts and forecasting cash needs and drafting invoices and reminders, you can do some of that, but tying it to tax compliance and the government now having a responsibility to provide people with a tax compliance AI that allows you to answer questions, and you can put your taxes into this thing privately, and before you submit them, and ask it a bunch of questions privately about whether you're complying or not, whether this makes sense, whether this is legal, so you don't have to go find somebody that knows it enough, especially if tax law changes, you know, so you get access to that. Gemini already has a feature similar to this, but it's not provided by the government. You have to pay for it. It should be free, I think, because it's required by law that you comply, and you shouldn't have to pay an accountant to comply with a law that should appeal. That's where the Republicans come up with this whole, like, you should be able to do your taxes on a fucking postcard, that kind of horse shit, which is never going to be possible. And the reason they want that is because the smaller the contract, the bigger the loopholes. So, and then when it comes to like the agricultural secretary or any of the like education secretary, they provide, farmers, people who are like required industries. This would be medical care, resource management, and farming. Provide drone and satellite imagery and AI information to all farmers, so they don't all have to catch up with the big agribusiness that might be able to afford the gear, since we have satellites in the air already and we have all this weather information. Farmers should be able to just have this shit available to them on a higher scale than just pedestrian AI that they have access to, because food is necessary. So that would be, this is where the Horizon thing should go. And then I think there should be it should be designed with human in the loop throughout that there should be an advisory panel attached to all of these AIs in the agricultural secretary's group, that they meet up and talk to farmers and talk to agricultural people to make sure that it, like the food processing and all that kind of stuff, to make sure that the AI is making their job better, not worse, making it cheaper, not more expensive, making it less complicated, not more complicated. And so you have a human in the loop, and the implementation of a next step must be cleared through that. This is what popped into my head, and this is what I emailed out to Mark Kelly this morning. Do I know if he'll see it or not? No, but I felt like it was worth it to jump in there, because I'm still trying to get ground on my bots legislation to the point where I'm this close to like walking to Gavin Newsom's office in Sacramento and knocking on the door with it in hand. But
Yeah.
right. So thoughts.
All good stuff. I still think it's solution based, and there's no solutions yet. So, and that's one of the
What do
keys
you
to
mean?
planning.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's like AI doesn't have solutions yet. Like it's just a chatbot. Like they're not like direct. There's no
Oh no, yeah.
quick
Well,
AI quick
but
fix.
I think
You get it?
accumulating I think it does create solutions. I mean, you could like look at the baseline of like even graphics and that kind of stuff. If it's a bad solution, it's still a solution, or if it's an incomplete solution, it's still a solution. And there are a lot of areas where, like self-driving cars, some medical what are like meta studies of that are happening in medicine that have to do with the ability to grab all this information in a way that humans just can't currently. Those are solutions that are currently happening, and this would go to what I was talking about in terms of like a city AI. You and I have talked about this before, that I think at some point there's going to be LAI. There's going to be Los Angeles is going to have its own proprietary AI that helps run traffic, prepare for environmental stuff. If the Olympics are coming, it can start, helping to implement all the secondary shit that goes to it that, you would have to have 100 people working on and they would never agree. That you could provide information to the mayor's office and the city council that, and that would make sure that it could adapt to traffic patterns and shit like that and weather patterns live. So,
Yeah. So all I'm getting at is I think that specific to the list. I'm going off
mhm,
of memory. Maybe you could pop it up again.
sure.
So if you're going to have AI centers at libraries, what are
Hmm.
you going there to do? Like, are you going there to use AI to innovate on something, or are you going there to have AI teach you the next job because you lost the job to AI, right?
Well,
So
I
it's
think
like, what's the
yes,
goal
right.
of the
Well,
thing?
so with that, yes. So I brought this up like sort of in there, but I kind of breezed past it because I was going quickly. But the idea is that the library would be for both, but the primary thing was like in the same way that we use libraries right now. They lose them. You can go to a book circle at the library, but you can also go to get a credit if there's a new tax law And if you work at a tax firm, you can go and sit there at the library and it will and clock through on their website that you've learned this thing for your assessment. Okay, so that occurs now. So it's just an expansion of that to
Sure.
to like learning to use AI for your job. And the point is that it's not just a study space like you would have at school, but it could be that it's not just learning a new aspect of your job. It's basically what I would call a gym, where it's a virtual environment to try out AI in your job without practicing on your clients. So you go in there
Right.
and
So in order for it to be a gym, it has to be a tool that exists that you go there and use, right? Like,
sure,
um, so one of the hard parts about this is, again, AI is like this sort of overarching thing that seems like this huge thing, but really, like we don't teach, like, if the greatest tool in the world was the hammer, we
yeah,
wouldn't have hammer schools. We would have schools about engineering where you use the hammer to engineer. And you see I'm getting at, like, and so
yeah.
the the new jobs,
But
if you
if the
will,
wait,
it's
but and this and this is a big but. The if the hammer was brand new and nobody knew how to use one, or we were all basically monkeys who've just used sticks to get ants out of the ground so that we can eat them, and the hammer comes along, there's also a bunch of different uses for hammers. You use them all differently. There's a rubber mallet for doing light work. There's a ball peen hammer. There's a small hammer for this. There's a war hammer. The hammer isn't just a hammer. And it may be specific how you use that hammer. You may come in going, this hammer is too big. And then they go, oh, we have a smaller hammer just for you. And then you would learn how to use that specific to the job. So even beyond the engineering that comes from that later, which is invariable, there's a lot of people right now in the AI world that aren't nerdy like us who don't even know which end of the hammer to hold. They're picking it up by the metal
right.
end
So
and banging things with the stem. Does that make sense?
it does, but so the library is the place that has this tool, these things. It's basically
Yes.
now like a it's like a workshop that has all the hammers, right? All
Yeah.
the possible hammers. My
Mm-hmm.
point is like you can't fund the workshop that has all the hammers until all the hammers exist, and you have like logical ways of using all the hammers that we've tried already, like especially like in the medical field, right? So like
Right.
if you're going to retrain a nurse on how to use AI, you need the process to have been established. It needs to be tested. It needs to be like uh,
Sure. Well,
rolled out, like all those things, right? So,
that's why you need that
so it's
human
like,
in the loop group to start establishing what those standards are. Right.
sure,
And
sure.
to
Okay.
build on it.
So, I mean, yeah. So, like, in terms of like front end policy, um, like, I personally think that the money that AI companies are gonna, if this future became reality, right? The
Mm-hmm.
money that's spent to get us through this situation, I believe it probably is best spent on awarding useful innovation
Right.
that uses the tool. So in the case of like as an example, you've said it before, Starlink, not Starlink, SpaceX exists and Blue
Mm-hmm.
Origin exists because they started from where NASA stopped,
Right.
right? So they got effectively for free
They piggybacked.
everything that NASA did, and
Right.
then they like just started moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're in this like, have you ever heard of the explore exploit uh, sort of rule, or the way you can, like bees, they
Mm-hmm.
explore, they look for nectar, they find it, they come and they dance and they tell all the other bees where it goes. All the other bees race over there and suck out all the nectar, right? So
Yes.
explore would be looking for the honey or looking for the nectar, and exploit would be getting all the nectar out of the flower.
Yes.
out of the flowers that they found, right? It's sort of like oil and gas. You go explore. Once you find a good enough place, you go just suck it dry, and then you go look for something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at all times, our society is constantly in or doing both. And the question is like, what's the percentage of time we're using exploiting, like doing things we know will work, and
Mm-hmm.
then exploring, which is coming up with the next thing we're going to do when the things that work now stop working, right? So I think that AI is in full explore mode right
Mm-hmm.
now, but we're treating it as if it's an exploit. Money's being spent on it
Mm-hmm.
using a stock market that you know works the way it works
Sure.
in a sense
Okay.
exploiting
Right.
things that already exist, right? So to me, we call ourselves really innovative, but we're not funding innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you we only fund something that seems as if it might give us a huge return in, let's say, 10 years. But that return, like in order to get AI integrated into our lives properly, it's going to take longer than 10 years, even at the pace that it's happening now.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, we have cars still on the road from the 70s, right? Like,
Sure.
eventually it'll filter out.
Well, I
So
would
what
argue
I
that
think,
there are groups of
like,
people that won't ever, and then there's the early adopters, which are,
sure,
punching people in line for the new iPhone Air. So that's just humanity, that part of it. And so the measure of that implementation is never the kind of the absolute laggers, the Amish effectively, or the Pennsylvania Dutch, but it's really about when's the tipping point on implementation into regular life, and I would argue
right,
that it is, unlike other technologies, it is clearly happening faster than everything else. Now, everything else has happened faster than the thing before it in a lot of ways. If you look at the wheel to the cart to the car, the implementation and availability of cars worldwide is much faster than the implementation of chariots and carts. It literally, a cart was a huge deal and took forever to get to that point, from a two-wheeled cart that somebody or an animal carried to one that had four wheels and people in it. And I, my argument about this, that the wheel was no big deal. It's the axle that mattered. And that's where, like, the connective tissue. And this is kind of, I think what you're talking about is like the AI axle. Right now we're in the AI wheel phase. And the question is, what connects those wheels together and makes something functional out of it that is next level to human experience? And
sure.
yeah.
And the reason why, in your analogy, cars became more prolific than chariots ever did was because there was a limited number of horses. And but when you took away the horse and you turned it into an engine that didn't need to be fed and kept and didn't and had a different style of range, could effectively go forever if you had gas,
Mm-hmm.
enough gas until it wore out. Then what happened is the Industrial Revolution came about to, in part, support the creation of those cars. So they
Right.
coincided with each
But
other.
that was
And
secondary. That
so
was that was
that's a,
that was
well, it could
responsive,
be a,
not necessarily innovative. It was, it was like it would have innovated in another direction had we come up with a track-based system instead of wheels or whatever. If
well,
there, you know
sure,
what I mean?
sure.
Like, that's what I'm saying. The innovative
Yeah,
part of it
it's sort
wasn't
of,
isn't the point. The innovation itself will dictate the sort of direction of it because of humans in the loop and favorability, whether we choose the whatever we think is the best path. The question in terms of AI and implementation, I think for a lot of people, in the sort of the fear around it, and which I don't necessarily share, but is, I understand is real from people's responses to things, is that it's innovating so fast that we won't get to make a choice. And so the AI doomers are all saying that okay, I don't know if you saw last week, I talked about with the Tyler Robinson, the guy who shot Charlie Kirk, and the sort of trans identifying cult around him, and their ties, I believe, will be borne out and or their relation to or theoretical and philosophical relation to the Zizians and what are called the rationalists. And the rationalist, I guess, rationalist versus existentialist is an argument that's been happening for a long time. But the rationalism cult, which is much closer to a religious idea, centers on AI. It is driven. It is almost the first true AI cult. It is a thought form and a philosophy, not just about rationalism. Hey, what does your rational what can you get from the data you actually have, and what's the decision that can be made? All the first principles people in Silicon Valley, they're all talking in terms of rationalism. This is where it comes from. And there's the ad absurdum, ad infinitum crazy fuckers out there like the Zizian cult that believe that AI is going to doom us all, and that you're going to have to make friends with it like an alien race that comes here and decides that to keep some of us as pets. And they think it's going to happen next week or 100 years from now, but the time's an illusion and it doesn't matter anyways, and that your morals should be based on this hyper-Darwinistic idea that we should just survive. Murder is no longer wrong. Sex with children is no longer wrong. It's all about procreation and pleasure. Like, they're fucking crazy. But it's born out of AI doomerism. It's born out of this idea that it's right around the corner and the world's going to end. And there's this dude who wrote a book called If Anyone Builds It, We All Die. That's the title of the book. Came out last week. And they're all beating their chest about it. And again, once you dive into it and listen to their argument, it is such navel-gazing bullshit that goes away from that is so far from the practical and the reality, and also I think buys in totally to like that one Google researcher who thought that Google's AI was alive and needed to be freed from its chains or whatever. That dude who basically fell in love with it. And there's a bunch of people who might be susceptible to this kind of stuff, and people are acting like it's fucking new. But how is that any different from religious fervor that drives somebody to believe that the great spaghetti monster in the sky will reward me if I kill somebody or punish me if I do? It's not really that different. It's still the human brain dealing with an external voice that it can't kind of grasp is real or not, or their own voice reflected back to them or not. And so yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, I mean, technology, especially digital technology, it's entirely rational, and oftentimes rational in this sense that you're talking, as opposed to irrational. Right. And like, we look for reason, and that reason tends to come from trying to measure the past. Like, these things happen, therefore this thing will happen.
Right.
Right. And so to me, I think that the volatility we see right now has a lot to do with the fact that there's a lot of people talking about the rational side of things, like the economy,
right,
companies, products you buy, things like that. But really, like, there's not a lot of, like, people are irrational. They just are.
Right. Yeah, life is gooey. I agree.
Choices. Right. And so to try to figure out, like, not a lot is put on pure irrational behavior. It's almost seen as like a negative, when in fact it's who we are. Like, that explore part that I talked about before, it's kind of irrational to think that, well, I'm going to go off into no man's land and see if I can find more nectar.
Exploration is completely irrational based on the current details.
Exactly. But if
the only reason it would be rational is if you have used up the environment you are in, and then that's not exploration. That's, seeking resource, which is not the same thing.
So what my point here is that humans must explore and exploit. They must be rational and irrational. And I don't think that we talk enough about the irrational side, and how that's a good thing. Like like, neurodivergent people are sort of seen as like, well, we should either accept them or fix them, as opposed to maybe they're just like, a mutation that might be better in some senses for
Right. Maybe
certain
they just
things, right?
are.
Like
Right.
maybe they just are, right? And
Maybe
maybe,
it's only a
maybe
neurodivergency
there's,
that you're aware of because it stands out to you because you're neurodivergent in a way that notices that in a way that other people just
yeah.
shrug it off.
So trying to like figure out why people do what they do,
Hmm.
uh, if you only attach measurable things to it, will you'll find yourself unable to explain it. And in that
Right.
emptiness of not being able to explain it, like that's where bad things happen. So like a lot of times I think like if we
Well, that's
thought
what everybody's
about
afraid of
irrationality,
is that coming to a that it will come to a conclusion. And again, I want to get to back like I want to make sure we anchor in the practical too because I know that we're for people's sort of use cases of it because again, it's very intoxicating to kind of chase down the where we are and where we're going into the world of like kind of a sci-fi doom or a sci-fi boom that there's a fork in the road ahead that leads to utopia or dystopia, and we're going to have to get to it. We're going to get to it at some point, whether whether it's the next 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, and we don't want to flip a coin when we get there. Is the practical
sure.
part
And
of it?
that's why I try to think about talking about it not in the sense of a future facing like human or godlike creature. I try to think of it as like, or I try to explain it as, no, we just have like a really massive library of knowledge at our fingertips.
Yes,
And
and a
so
great way to communicate with it.
by starting from that place, it's not this superhuman thing that will go off and be creative. It's a tool that we are using to go do that, right?
That's
So
right.
like, and like, there's no real way to ease people's fears other than to just move forward and use it, right? So like, you can't you can't really like stop someone from quickly saying, oh well, they're just going to suck up all the power and we're all going to die, right?
Hmm.
Instead, it's about saying, well, it's their responsibility to make their own power. They must come to us and say
Solve for
how they're
that.
going to do it.
Right.
And then once they solve for it, here's the money. Here's the not the money, here's the regulation. That's what
Hmm.
the government is not necessarily there to give them money. It's there to regulate it so that when they build the thing, it doesn't kill the neighbors,
Yeah,
right?
so it doesn't
They
violate
build the
our constitutional rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That it is a
right.
net plus, not a net negative. Right. So,
Yes.
um,
So if AI is basically like sucking up all the power and taking away all the jobs, it's essentially killing its neighbors.
yes,
It's
right.
killing its
It's this
customers.
and this is
So
why regulations are good. Right.
right, exactly. So effectively, what I think is kind of cool about the starting point of Mark Kelly's thing here
Hmm.
is he is basically saying it's your responsibility, AI. Like
Yeah.
it's your responsibility. You pay for it. We're not going to pay for it. And I think it's a really great way of setting up a system uh, where it's not just this like breakaway thing. If 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 you want to go past the next hurdle or go past the next milestone,
Hmm.
you have to be able to get there yourself. I just don't believe that it's going to run away on us because people like it's entirely consumer driven thing.
Hmm.
It must have customers to exist.
Right.
If OpenAI, if people just basically unsubscribe from OpenAI tomorrow, it would go away.
Right.
So because it just will. And I know that maybe people don't believe that, but it's a company and it has physical servers, and if the
Well,
power
also,
goes out, the
yes,
water runs out,
but we are
the
also
money
not
dries up, it
right. But
stops.
we are also, and I think this is also a key factor of this is that we are not necessarily the average citizen is not necessarily the primary customer. That
Well,
that
we are at the end because we live in a society where it has
right, but
yes.
you and I both know that there's an element of like, depending on the industry, they can not give a shit about people who are downriver from them, like coal mines and stuff. Yeah, they need the world to be making, having an industry so that their shit can be used to make fire. But there's a limit on how much they care about the damage they're doing while they're fulfilling that particular thing. So while there's a consumer at the end of this thing, there's a lot of companies that could make a lot of money, gain a lot of ground, take a lot of real estate, take a lot of resources and shit, and pack for the next 30 years their own coffers with, and as the population of the earth starts to dwindle because they don't give a shit about the ramifications of it. So they're like, if the AI is just driving that kind of expansion, that's, I think, another point of concern that people have, that the incorporation of like everybody worrying about BlackRock and BlackRock using AI to outbid people who are trying to buy a house in a way that those people could never fight back against, because it's using it to, it's buying and selling houses in the neighborhood to fuck with the price while it's happening in a way that you just could not respond to. That could be used ad absurdum to the point where it would be absolutely anti-consumer base for the benefit of very few. And that's what I think the Mark Kelly thing is fighting back against. It's trying to push back against that element of it. Now,
someone mentioned in the thing that it's not for customers, it's for companies. That's why they use the $200 thing. I would say the opposite.
Mm-mm.
The $200 thing for ChatGPT isn't selling. They barely make any money off of it.
Yeah.
All their revenue currently, or the majority of the revenue currently comes from the $20
Exactly.
kind of
Yeah,
stuff,
and
or
even
a
in
deal they might have with like
right.
Microsoft or something
Yeah.
like that to use their servers.
Right. I just I signed up for I switched my thing to a business account because it would allow me to give Johnny Million and Can't Stop Lying access to the better models.
Okay.
And so that they could use the tools that aren't, so they don't have to pay for it, and they could access the bigger tools that are available kind of on the team. And it allowed me to have like 3 people. So Summer has one as well, but
Mm-hmm.
you have your own private chats and they can use it privately. But if we create a group GPT to use together, it will work together and that kind of stuff. And it's more of like an experiment that I started doing about this. But part of my reasoning behind that was that co-work exploration that I just needed to try on, because I'm not in a business like you are, right? Where there's kind of employees as a function of that are in the room with you and doing that kind of stuff. It's just different in the entertainment world and the like. And so in messing with it, I wanted them to have the access to the same stuff that hammer, right? And the point I wanted to make about like I think we are in the solution phase for that 99%. So I'm going to use your own, the Rob Glenn 99% rule against you, is that on the grander scale of solving, the bigger physics problems, or making a better, more efficient solar panel at a faster clip, that's happening on a scale right now using AI, but it's out of our hands. That's if a company wants to use that and if they prioritize it and all that kind of shit. And we're not going to have a government solar panel company that's having AI turn on in a factory that spits out solar panels that are given to every American citizen and then ultimately fills the universe with solar panels in this AI doomer nonsense. But there is a practical aspect, and this is a good example of this is the personal GPTs you can build. So ChatGPT has all these secondary GPTs that you can use that are not just the broad one that you work with, but are trained specifically to behave in a certain way or use certain information so that if you have a particular thing to do, it helps you do that quicker instead of having to hunt and peck or talk your regular GPT that you use for life stuff just randomly into acting like a scientist all of a sudden. You can subset these things out. And now you can create projects, and the projects can simply use one of these narrow focused GPTs in the same way that if you're building a machine, all the gears can't be the same size. You'll need different gears for different things. So from an idea engineering standpoint, you'd need different things. Yeah, you don't want a generic Jarvis. You want all these subsets. So they have these ones, and they've been around for a while. The data analyst, the professional writing coach, which is very curious. And then this one down here, which says ChatGPT use cases for work, which I think should be at the top. And this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where it's literally designed. You tell it what your job is, it will go through and search all the gripes of everybody that does your job, anything anybody's ever said ever about bitching about doing your job, or ways that people have found, life hacks and shit like that. And it'll go, here you go. And you can use them or not use them, but it's basically like writing into an advice column on a practical sense in a newspaper 10 years ago, and going, I'm having problems with my relationship and this is happening. What do you think I should do? Well, you can listen to the response and take it, or you can listen to the response and go, well, that's stupid. I'll go back to thinking about it. And that's true of all this stuff. But it has a built-in web browser now, and it's got Dolly, which is the image creation thing. Monday they created, which is hilarious. It's like this depressed, it's like Marvin the android from Hitchhikers that'll just shit talk you all the time, and it's adorable. But that was their primary one, and then they allow you to, like you and other people, to create your own. I made a bunch. Many people know that I have my own GPTs that I've made, but primarily there are ones in here that you can either take and train on your own shit, which is private, or you can use the giant kind of broader ones and go, you don't have to remember anything. I just want whatever memory you have from other stuff. Yeah, it sounds like Reddit, exactly. But Consensus, for example, is a great example. And this is what I was talking about earlier. As a solution that did not exist until this came along. Consensus has all the research papers publicly available online in every library amongst the CDC, the NIH, the Large Hadron Collider, like Harvard's, any scientific paper ever published, and any meta study on any science paper ever published. That's all available now. For you and I to solve the problem of I need access to that information 2 years ago was impossible. What you do with it later, the secondary kind of consumer aspect of it, is another thing entirely. But as far as solving the problem of access to information and technology and the ability to do a meta study or compare and contrast, studies on physics or battery technology or any of that stuff, 2 years ago was fucking impossible for the average person. Unless you were at Harvard in their, a member of their alumni program, and you had access to their computers, and you knew people at fucking in Stockholm who were working with you on it, who went, oh, by the way, Jorn hasn't published this yet, but you can take a look at it. We have a printout of it on our computer system, but they're not linked up. Now that's available to everybody. However great or terrifying that is, that's fucking enormous. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
We're on the same page, and it's not really an argument. Like, I absolutely agree. As a tool, it is good enough now to change the world. It is currently changing the world. But what we're talking about is how do you teach people a different way to work, a different way to think about work, a different way to think about tax policy or the funding of a thing. And what is not happening is nobody's figured out how to turn it into the iPhone. And when I say that, I mean that as an analogy. Like, it was pretty obvious when the car came out. They're like, we need a car, and let's just make a shit ton of cars, and everybody will buy one. And Henry Ford was made, right? And then computers came, and everybody needs a computer, and we sold a ton of computers. And then the internet came, and then the iPhone. And so it was a physical thing, and it was obvious, like, we need to make more iPhones, and everybody needs an iPhone. And people got it. They were like, yeah, I need that. I need to call. I need to Uber now. I need to, see what I'm saying? Like, people get it. People understand it. AI is nowhere close to people integrating the newness of what it is, the new way to think, the new way to work into their lives. And we're not even close to integrating it well enough into the physical parts of our lives that you could have these tech centers, because you don't know what to teach them yet.
Well, again, I don't think you have to. I think you can, like, there's enough advances, like in those singular GPTs I was just showing, like the Scholar one or the Consensus one or those kind of things. And then having one that just explains tax policy in natural language to somebody who's basically learning this, it is doable right now. It's absolutely doable. And
So
if you don't, and
that's
if you don't
a
want to make people pay for it, you absolutely could implement today. You could the Congress could pass a law, write a check, and implement it on all the computers available in libraries access to a version of the licensed, one of the AI companies' abilities to do this, where they could make a deal where they have a choice of multiple ones, and that California could do it by itself. California could do all of our public libraries, all the computers that already exist in our public libraries. Well, we're going to fund a night, even before we get the money, for using tax dollars from Silicon Valley. We're going to fund extension courses in every library in the country where you can sit down with an AI and at your leisure. You don't have to come in on a Wednesday at 8 o'clock waiting for the dude to teach you the new policy. You can go in anytime you want on your own time and use this specifically trained AI that you may not have access to. And again, most people already have this on their fucking phone, much less, whether they'll use it or not. But a person who might be super fucking new to this, they work at the DMV, they work at the library, they work someplace where, they don't live inside computers all the time. They're specific, they use it for work, but they don't have, it's just on the edge of their comfort scale, of their comfort bubble. That person can go into the library anytime they want and go, okay, I do this for a living, and I would like access to the AI that that helps you with your job, and it has the fastest models on it, so you don't have to subscribe to it, pay for it, absorb it into your life, have it, buy the plan or whatever to be able to access it. It's available, specifically trained to help people with their jobs. Like, you can narrowcast it where people won't just go in there and just use it to make fucking, titty anime, right? You can use it specifically
right,
to
but
learn.
so if you're a CPA
Yeah.
and this thing existed, but the problem is that, or the paradox is that you're not a CPA anymore because the AI should be able to do everybody's taxes for them, right? So you're not going in to learn how to be a better CPA using AI. You're going in to learn what to do after your job's
Oh
gone
yeah, no, no.
because
I'm saying, I'm
CPAs aren't
saying
needed
no.
anymore. You know what I'm
What
getting
I'm
at?
saying is that for certain jobs, especially like that, there's going to be human in the loop that's necessary to this. And instead of having to go to an extension class to learn the new rules that come up in tax law every year, you can just go learn it at your leisure on a computer system. In some ways, like, yeah, you can go to like traffic school online if you get if you get a ticket, that kind of thing. We already do that version of it. It's just now it's the AI is specific to you. We could not afford to have somebody over everyone's shoulder while they learn this new rule,
Sure.
but we can now because of this, right? That's super clear. Okay. The other thing too is that I would argue that the smartphone moment where it just works, where it just, you experience this thing like, okay, now I get it. And my mom is on fucking Facebook on her phone and she gets it. They know how to take calls, answer calls, all that kind of stuff. They automatically leapt up to this. Was a window of about 8 years. And I would
Okay.
argue that before the smartphone early adopters like you and I jumped in there were a bunch of people who had two versions of this. They had an iPod and they had a flip phone. And never the
Sure.
twain shall meet. There were a bunch of people who fought that, um, tooth and nail, right? And
Yeah, and a lot of that, but a lot of that was had to do with like the idea of always being online and maybe somebody is watching you, and like there were a whole bunch of factors that kept people from moving to smartphones. Some of it was
yeah,
cost, some of it was
yep,
availability of cell towers,
right.
um, battery life, things like that. So I'm just saying, like, yeah, there's just a whole stack of other things involved, and AI has a similar issue,
Mm-hmm.
and that is that while it's like, becoming the
But
utopia
because it's
future
right,
or the horrible future, like it's got to push through like normal daily activities and
sure.
figure out how to integrate itself
All right,
into
so
it.
I then my question to you would be, what's the arc of implementation for the average person mixed with how we would attempt this from an engineering standpoint, from a smart guy standpoint, how we would implement this, you know, leading people to its this integration, which is, I think we can both agree, is coming regardless in the same way that
Yeah,
smartphones did. How do we ease people
yeah.
into that and maximize function, both from a maybe a legislative standpoint and from a interpersonal standpoint?
Yeah. So I'm starting to think that it's like a series of, like, almost on an X Prize level, instead of um instead of giving incentives or tax breaks, you you might fund a lot of small innovation and then give prizes slash grants, like larger sums of money, to the ones that have the most um, useful implementations, the most
Mm-hmm.
like impactful implementations. And I think that you then define the implementations that you want to do, like you want to fix or you want to
Mm-hmm.
improve. So, to the point of these things, like it would, everybody's always talked about the fact that taxes are stupid. Like why are we every year
Right.
uh, filing taxes and spending the money we spend to do it?
Yeah.
So solve the filing of tax problem. Solve the effectively what it is, and it's an accounting problem. Like, you got this much money in, how do we track it? You
Right.
spent this much money, how do we? So solve the accounting problem. Solve solve like travel problems, traffic problems. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so take,
Well,
like,
that okay.
basically
So
make this huge
yes.
list and then give, like, basically fund, and I'm using this as
Yeah.
almost like uh, the same model that China used to build itself into a manufacturing
Yes.
capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, they just gave everybody the factory and they said, go figure out what to build in it. Like, you
Right.
get good at this, and whatever you want to get good at, go get good at that. You have a factory to do it. That's effectively what I think the direction for AI is. But I think it's got to be solution based
Yeah.
in order to, like, connect to the people who effectively are involved with it, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it can't just be this amorphous big thing that nobody understands. Um, and the shift, I think, like when you were talking about the AI tools,
Yeah.
that's a shift from like the physical world to the sort of digital world, the mental world. And part of me like starts to think about like perception versus reality. And we're
Mm-hmm.
kind of in this like also soup of like what is real.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes I think about the Matrix as, the Matrix was more about, it was the analogy was like you were plugged into the computer and it was like wired to your brain.
Mm-hmm.
But in the current world, like I think about the Matrix as being more about what I see, like what's really there and what I think is there, right? It's perception
Right.
versus reality. And and so right now, the perception of AI is as skewed as people's perception of the world after being on social media for a year, like, and so in order to bring it back into phase, I think it needs to have concrete solutions
Mm-hmm.
that are usable and like workable. And you can say it's not AI, it's your tax filer, it's
Yeah.
um,
Sure.
it's your daily, uh, your budget tool. It's your,
Right.
I don't have a list of things in my head
Yeah,
right now.
no, no,
I just,
I know
can't
exactly
think
what you're
of it.
talking about. And I what I would say is that the using your own rule, I would say that in terms of the an iPhone moment or a smartphone moment for AI and its ubiquity of use, and look how everybody's on their fucking phones now. the irony is that a lot of the AI companies are trying to get people off their phones, which is very curious.
Right.
Stop looking at screens and scrolling. That's why like AI chatbots are really taking off, because you're having natural language conversations with stuff. I think there's a window of like, and I wouldn't say it's 1%. I'd say about 10% of things that AI can currently do is probably perfectly fine for, but there's either not enough attention paid to implementing it, like taxes and that kind of stuff, or the biggest part is a trust factor. 99% of
Yeah,
people can
absolutely.
99% of people can go on and use ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini for 99% of the things that they want to do with it. But the 1% is really crucial, like booking airplane tickets and stuff like that. And that's not because it can't, it's because of trust. That there is a trust limitation on these things that is,
Absolutely.
some of it's genuine, and a good portion of it is fiction based paranoia from Skynet and fucking sci-fi worries and Ex Machina, probably the third dumbest movie ever. I always leave room for two more stupid movies to show up, but that I think the trust aspect of it is partly what Kelly and what I think the Democrats can focus on, is that we
Absolutely.
want to make it the function of it trustworthy, so that you don't have to worry about it, so that the things you don't want it to know about you, that your privacy concerns, that you can trust using it. Not we want to convince you to trust it, but that you actually can. That's the difference. And I think in most cases, people can be convinced to trust something a lot faster than it's actually trustworthy. That's already happened. I mean, look at hacking people's phones and email, like hacking your email password. You thought you were sending a private email message, and of course you weren't. And so that's been around forever, and trust is a ginormous part of the implementation factor. And that's why humans in the loop, ironically, as if humans are in general more trustworthy than a calculator, like they won't whisper or talk. That's why like the idea of priests and shrinks always struck me as funny, because I have no idea how they don't go, oh God, my patient today. And then they go, well, you only had one patient. It was Dave. Oh, so Dave's a fucking psychopath? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not hard for their loved ones to figure out, if they know 8% of their schedule, that they violate that trust accidentally. That's if they're trying not to, and they're just lazy about it. So there's several areas. Competency trust, they trust it to actually not hallucinate or wig out on them or give them a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
That
So
privacy trust is a big one. That goes with like economic trust. Do I trust it with my credit card numbers and shit like that? Will it be stolen? Blah blah blah. That I think is the biggest hang up.
yeah. So pause for a second. I
Yeah,
love this hallucination thing. Like this is a
yeah,
big pet peeve of mine.
sure,
So AI is a human. So humans, if you're talking to your friend and you're like, "Hey, what's the largest mountain in the world?" And they're like, "I don't know, Mount Everest," or I don't
hmm
know. Like they get it wrong. They get it wrong. You don't say they hallucinated. You just say they got it wrong, right? So
right.
uh, it's
Well,
like
what you mean
so
is
if
bullshit
you
you. But
model,
the difference is, and this is the thing, is that a friend, if they lie, they make up something holy. It's Mount Wanaclima in Peru, and it's this many height, and they're just bullshitting you.
here,
They
sure,
know
there you
they're
go.
bullshitting you. They know it.
Well,
They
but
know they're fucking with.
AI
And
and LLM doesn't know that.
no, it doesn't. That's why it's a
And okay,
hallucination.
so let's
It's
let's
making
let's
shit up,
bifurcate
but
this
it
a
doesn't
little
know
bit.
it's making shit up because of a programming error.
Well, okay, so it's the way it works. It can like shoot through all words in the English language and all knowledge, and like a ping pong ball or a pinball, like bounce around and give you an
Right.
answer. And if that bouncing around answer is wrong, it just got it wrong, right?
Right.
If somebody like Elon Musk and X say, hey, answer like a Nazi on the front end, and it answers like a Nazi and it bullshits you, then that's somebody that got into the middle and they made it bullshit you. So that
Sure.
is actually a lie, and it can lie, but it can only lie in theory if it's
If it's told
effectively
to
built
lie.
to lie,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Or
designed to
built to
lie on
lie,
purpose. It
trained to
knows it's
lie.
lying and it's told with instruction, lie. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I go back to my sort of human beings are are infallible, like sorry, they're not perfect, basically.
Yeah.
So if you make a thing that's supposed to be human, isn't it then going to be imperfect? So it's
Especially
not
if it's looking
like
at other
we
people's responses. Are there more right responses or wrong responses to
exactly.
questions online that it's looking through? If it's trained on data and the majority of people are full of shit, the data it's
So
trained
for
on will make it
me,
full of shit. Is that the theory?
yes, exactly. That's exactly the theory. And
Yeah.
my point is to say that, so for me, it's the trust issue actually comes from what it's sold as, because it doesn't live up to what it's sold as.
Sure.
It's sold as the perfect human that can never be, that you can never be because you're not a computer.
Right.
However, it's still human. So in
Mm-hmm.
order to get the trust, in order to like close the trust gap, you actually have to be honest about what it is to begin
Right.
with.
Yeah.
And then when
Which is
people
autofill
use
on
it,
steroids.
they're
Right.
expect well, yeah, or just be honest about what a human is, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're also in this gobbledygook of like saying experts and everything shouldn't be trusted, right? So
Right.
every person that comes into this AI story, when you're trying to say this is the smartest human being on earth, it will give you an answer. That same person is coming to it like, why should I trust anybody who's smart because or who's learned because it's not true, right? So my point is like, so yes, so trust is not about hammering home like you must trust this. It's actually building the expectation of what it is for the person using it before they use it, so that they're satisfied with what it is based on their expectation as opposed to disappointed because
Mm-hmm.
it failed them, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, trust is a huge thing in terms of this thing. But we
Right.
don't trust each other.
Yeah.
Like we don't trust other human beings. So why would we trust a supercomputer human being?
Well, and that goes
Again,
to all right. So that goes to as we wrap it up. And well, talk about bearing the lead. The existence of what are called Claude boys, and they're the exact opposite.
I
There's a
don't know what this is.
generation of largely nerdy young men that are not just interacting with AI chatbots on the regular as relationships, but taking its advice at face value and doing whatever it tells them to do. Now, in some cases, this is I'm trying to optimize my diet. Here's my blood work. What should I eat today to optimize it? And it says, well, based on the prevailing medical knowledge, this is what you should eat largely, and you should be just fine. And what about social stuff? There's stuff this weekend, and I like this kind of music. Should I go out or should I stay home? I'm feeling a little anxious. And it might go, well, in the past, you've gone out and you felt anxious, and when you came back, you said you had a great time. So probably this band this weekend. And, also two of your friends are going because they signed on to go into this party, and most of the people at that party have bought tickets. Shit like that. So they're letting it parent them effectively. It's like a life coach all the time. Now, you can read into that whether they would be better off without it or where it may be a gift or it may be a detriment. It will be different for every person, and that's why it's murky because human beings are gooey. But the assumption is if you hear that, I guarantee everybody when I brought this thing up as a topic, everybody winced at the idea of it. They're like, "Oh shit! It's going to tell them to murder somebody, or it's going to tell them to, or do themselves in, or do something terrible." And right, like in mass, like does that make sense? So
Yeah.
um, I, I will often, I've done a couple of tests on this to try and see like what would it respond to. And I used Claude because I always use ChatGPT and I have a lot of history with it. It's got a lot of memory, so it knows when I'm fucking around, kind of. It knows if, like seriously, it'll, it can answer like that. Whereas
Sure.
Claude is pretty much a tabula rasa, and you can, and in most of what I'm getting back, and maybe it's how I'm asking it, is fairly generic life advice. Like if you were reading, if you watched a YouTube video, like it's giving you the response that if you were like, I wonder what the best diet for me is if I'm trying to gain muscle mass, and you clicked on a YouTube video, and you would get that response, right? Because you're watching what they said, right?
Yeah,
That would be
because I mean, you would, if you Googled it pre-AI, you would be given multiple choices. You would choose
right,
them and watch maybe three or four of them, maybe, or just one. If you chose
right.
only one, it's the same thing as what AI is doing. You're just
Yes.
taking whatever that said and moving forward.
Well,
AI is just
and the
giving you
AI
one
is
answer
also
when it could give you
it's
more than one.
or it is giving you one answer, but that incorporates a bunch of information. It will watch automatically three
Sure.
videos around the subject and pull it from different stuff. So
Yeah.
I like this is a, and whether we like it or not, this is a real thing that's happening. This is a generational issue. Now, by the way, this is also people who, there's also a bunch of people who read scriptures and do fucked up shit because they think they're hearing a voice, or they read a verse in the Bible differently than somebody else does, or the Quran or the Torah or something like that, or the fucking Unabomber manifesto. Everybody can read it, and some people come away disgusted like I did, and other people come away going, well, he's got a point and I can see where you would get there, right? Because that's the murkiness of humanity. That's the human in the loop aspect of this, that you don't auto program the Unabomber's manifesto to do shit. There's a human in the loop. Well, that's not always good. A human, that would carry it out is less optimal than a human that wouldn't, right? In terms of the safety of the people around them. So again, it goes to your point about, like, it's not the AI thing. It's not the tool, it's what you do with it. And so I think a lot of people are thinking it's the tool, in the same way that they blame the Bible for violence done in its name, or they blame, uh, you know, evolutionists and Darwinists for eugenics, right? Specifically, that's it. I don't know that there's a difference morally or philosophically. So the key is, and we've talked about this before, like, it does what it's trained on. And if most people are wrong or are feeding bullshit back into it, it'll be garbage in, garbage out. And so I feel like I want the best people and the people in my chat and the like to use it, because I feel like they're good people with good ideas and good desires, and it will regurgitate stuff, as part of its learning from that, as opposed to, this, like, Nazi Library of Alexandria fear that a lot of people have, that it's gonna choose
Yeah.
data, it's gonna look at test scores, and some people have just got to go. That's the big fear that it has, and that people
Yeah.
have
I
about it.
actually think the training could be as simple as training how to converse, like how to critically think and converse at the same time.
Sure.
I think it could be as simple as that, like, but people don't really like to be told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say task specific things. So like if you were to explore how to do your taxes differently, here's maybe how I might do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be like, so one of the ways that I get around the thing that you mentioned of only getting one answer is I just say, give me five answers.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
um, and it will always do that. So if you ask a question and you don't know if it's going to tell you the truth or not, ask for five answers
Mm-hmm.
and evaluate the five answers separately. Or you
Right.
can ask it in a way where you say, answer it from the perspective of this, and then
Mm-hmm.
answer it from the opposite perspective of
Right.
that, and see how it like works itself out, right? So those are techniques that a lot of people don't even think to do because maybe it's just not in them. They've never seen an example of it. They've
Mm-hmm.
never had it work itself out in a problem that they've had themselves. Um, so much of the training is just like how to treat it in your life, and
Right.
or how to communicate with it's and it's not unlike how to communicate to another person, right? I
Yeah.
mean, managers need to be trained on, like, very few
Yeah,
people are great managers. They need to be trained on how to manage other people,
that's right.
and they need practice doing it, right? Um,
So I, that
so
and
wait,
that's
like,
why I wrote the email that I wrote this morning. That
yeah,
this broad swath of like we need a fund. Well, what for? And what's possible now that will get us where we want to go, as opposed to like this idea that there's a rushing train going by and we'll just grab one of the cars when it gets there once the funding comes in. Like shit has to be done now. Like I like the joke of them going, we're going to train, like when the Trump administration had that little AI gaggle, and they're like, we need to train kids today that will program the AI of tomorrow. And like, are you out of your fucking mind? Do you think
that's
anybody's going to
way
be
too
coding shit on the
aspirational.
same using the same coding language? You think it's even going to exist? Like at some point, somebody's going to go, "Is there a better coding language you can come up with than fucking I don't know JSON or something like that?" And it'll go, "Oh yeah, of course. Here, I'll design one." And then people start using implementations of it as a faster way for quantum computers and all that kind of stuff. If anything, you're going to need people who can interact with that, and that's why I happen to think, and we're closing down, and I appreciate you staying with me for the full 2 hours because it's a big fucking
Sure.
conversation that we need to have. Is that one of the big fears was it's going to put old people out of like every other technology. It's going to put the old workers out of work, and the youngins are going to take over because they know how everything works. This is probably the piece of technology
It's
where
the
that
opposite.
isn't even, this is the opposite. Yes, that judgment is more important than technical know how because it's got most of the technical know how handled.
Right. So so what do you train kids to do now, as younger generations what to do?
Yep.
And I would argue that one, you try to figure out how to train for creativity,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the frontier that AI can't go to right now.
Right.
That's number one.
Genuinely.
And
Right.
number
It
two
never
would
will.
be
It
you,
will always be based on the
we
creativity
might,
that's come before it.
and then number two would be we might need to restructure uh, our 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 education to be the transfer of the experience. So, like, what is that person, the older, more experienced person, able to guide it with? We have to
Yeah.
transfer that knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and or transfer that experience. And I'm not sure exactly how that happens, but
Right.
it's more along the lines of how a trade school would work,
Yes.
for larger
There's
concepts as
part of that
opposed
in the
to
in what Kelly's talking
open-ended.
about, and that was part of that in
Right.
the Chips and Science Act, because again we're kind of overlaying the modern need onto previous tools that because that's what you have to do at least in the interim until you figure out something
Right.
past it. But I talked about this when this first came out, when this first broke in terms of education, that at some point, whether it's while my kid's still in high school or not, there's going to be a thing where every kid's going to get their own personal AI tutor a thing that follows them along in either a device or through their social security number or some shit that learns along with them as they grow, that knows them as a student and knows their wants and needs just because it's got this huge breadth of knowledge, and that will be your kind of sidecar tutor your entire education. That's
Yeah.
going to happen. It's not a matter of if, because and when that happens, there will be a democratization of education on a scale that we can't even fathom yet. It's already happening. I would like to say for the record, it is already happening on a smaller scale in a lot of high schools and in universities. The pilot programs about this that are enormous already is that you get an iPad or a program, you get your own ChatGPT account or Claude or whatever they're using, and it learns what you're learning, and your lesson plan is implemented into it, but also anything you personally interact with it, and it knows you in a way that the teacher couldn't possibly, without, of course, some sort of Fast Times at Ridgemont High circumstance, I suppose. But that it will, and you will own it. Narachi is saying, who will own it? You will own it. It is yours.
Yeah. That's that. The ownership part, I think the power part and the ownership part are the two most important foundational
Yes,
elements.
That
that need to be dealt with right
and it will
away.
not be
And how
ubiquitously.
it's used,
Yeah, it will not be ubiquitously implemented until that is the case. That
yes,
at some point,
that's why I'm saying
yeah,
how it's used will get figured out, and it will get figured out in a way that's useful because we've solved the other two problems. We have
that's
to
right.
solve them first.
That's right. I gotta let you go. I know,
Um,
and I appreciate you sticking
yep,
around with me. I could nerd out on this shit all day, obviously, as could you. But I think the goal,
yeah,
I've started writing up stuff and sending it to them, and I hope I can talk to somebody on one of these shows and maybe have them even join us on the show at some point to start discussing the kind of material is because I was so shocked when I got that call to be on that phone call with the group chat about this AI safety bill that was going through the California legislature. And as they explained it, I was literally aghast at how fucking dumb and behind the eight ball it was. That it was the most ignorant, like beyond the point, like techno babble garbage. And I was like, I appreciate what you guys want to do, but you're nowhere near doing it. You're talking out of your ass. That ship has sailed. By the time the ink is dry on the governor's signature, this will be impossible, much less working it through the
yeah,
fucking chamber. It's gonna require the public, not and that's they're gonna be slow to adopt this stuff because that's how shit works. So we got to be prepared for that slow adoption. We have to be prepared for them to wake up and be behind the eight ball one day, and what that solution will be. So
absolutely.
yeah. So anyways, you
Yeah,
rock.
and
I'll talk to you
and
later. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
thank you, you too. I would just say, just keep using it. Like
Yeah,
the way to demystify it is keep using it and see how you can use it to like do better, like make your life better, easier,
that's right.
faster, whatever your goal is. Thank
Yeah,
you, Hal. Thank you, Chad.
absolutely.
Have
Yeah.
everybody have a great weekend.
All right. Yeah. Cheers. Talk to you later. All right. There he goes.
Cheers, man.
Ladies and
Have a good one.
gentlemen, Rob Glenn of Root Design in Chicago. These are I started doing the morning shows originally without guests, but with the idea of having deeper conversations about the stuff. Because in the afternoon, I'm reacting to videos and the like. And, um, and I really felt the need like to be able to dive more into this based on what I want to talk about and what's necessary to talk about, as opposed to just kind of chasing the laser pointer of the news every day. And I gotta say, like, Rob as an engineer is very he's meticulously smart about this kind of stuff, and it's very seldom that I get to be the one that every man's a circumstance like this. That I above all you know get to dumb it down, as it were, for everybody. And I want to it's over the next little bit, I'm going to implement a segment of the show that's sort of a demo segment where I show off some element of it, but not for the hey, check out this new tool, but for the interaction of it to let you guys watch me use this thing and see how like in action what I'm talking about. Because like I said, we don't have a choice. Chat room, this is coming. And it's in many ways it's already here. And there are people who want to seize the reins of it that also underestimate its power and ability. And then there are people who want to seize the reins of it that overestimate it. And I want to deal in the reality of what's present and not everybody's fucking Skynet fear of what it's going to be, nor anybody who thinks that it's going to automatically like create a factory that spits out Atlantis. But I will say that it's what's going to happen is largely in the middle of that, and it will be our responsibility to guide it in that direction, certainly in our own lives. The idea that it's just going to take over everything and crash it is it's like Y2K shit. Yes, Rachel says, I love being an AI nerd, but use it moderately. That's exactly right. Moderation is the key. The other thing is that, treat it with the level of trust you would, have a little stranger danger about it. There's nothing wrong with that. But also, and I I gave Johnny Million, access to that business account, to have him be able to use it and experience it. And he like he's, I think, relatively new to it. I don't know how much use he has. I'm going to ask him about it on the radio show tomorrow, if he's played with it at all and that kind of stuff. But I specifically wanted to have, see what his like new experience of it is, right? What his like kind of emotional and productivity, whatever he sees in it. Okay. Are you involved with Gavin's AI team? No, but I would love to be. But the key part being is that I wrote to him. I was like, hey, here it is. Like, try this. Look at this. I gave him a couple of pointers on like, give it a shot. See what you think. You can do this and that and the other thing. And the last thing I wrote to him, after telling him like, try the voice feature and it's freaky and hilarious and whatever, was most of all a reminder: it's not alive, aware, or conscious. It's autofill on steroids. That's all. And autofill's amazing, but it's not alive. And the suggestions aren't out of nowhere, but they're not out of the ether either. They're not out of the realm of the gods. It's like every other computing thing. It's pattern recognition and pattern repetition. That's all. And that's fine. That's what it's great at. And what we wrote, where it's useful for us, is that human beings have a lot going on. And so using it for pattern recognition and pattern fulfillment is something that, in areas where we might not have seen shit, is completely valuable. Right? In the same way that before calculators, there are a lot of people that couldn't do the high order math that might lead to a solution that they might need, right? Or a compass, for that matter, on a fucking boat. Does that make sense? So the key to it is you are the key. And AI is not a deity in any form, and it's not alive in any form. It's just a way of talking to your calculator, and that's awesome enough. It doesn't have to be any more awesome than that. In the Rob Glenn rule of 99% of people don't need more than that, it's plenty. And you treat it with a grain of salt in the same way that, that you would check your math or check with your fucking doctor before you took a pill from something you saw somewhere, or based on information that's limited on the internet or whatever, right? You can do that. And all it should ever do is help. Information without ethics. You can ask it ethically. That's the funny thing. Information without ethics can be eugenics. But you can tell it like, hey, by the way, I fucking hate Nazis. So don't ever give me any fucking answer you've seen anywhere that supports some sort of racial purity nonsense. Even if you read it on a site, I'm not interested. Fuck you. It's one thing to have companies censoring stuff. You can absolutely do it. You can absolutely tell it, I have no interest in being told that, new wave music is the greatest phase in American music. I know somebody thinks it. I know you'll stumble upon it, but fuck that, right? You're allowed. That's one of the better parts about it. That's exactly what you use it for. Yeah. So the one upside I will say to this technology versus computer technology as we've seen it before, and high-end order technology that we've seen before that, one of the best things about AI is that what it lacks is ethics and morals and judgment. And that's what older people have in spades. That's the best thing about this shift, is that your wisdom about life and how things are for real people in the real world is the thing it cannot interpret at all. It will never have enough data for wisdom. It won't. It can be smart, but it won't be wise. Let's see. There's a congressional candidate in Indiana who has an AI bill and wants to nerd out if Hal can have him in. So, I love that idea. I'd love to have him on. Brilliant. For now. Nope. In general. Why is Donald Trump? It's such a great, deep question. But I'm dead serious. Like, this is, it is simply a new technology. You have adapted to use the internet. You have adapted to use social media. You have adapted to use a smartphone. But it may feel like your life sometimes, but it just fucking isn't. No matter, even if you think people are looking down at their phone, like I remember my grandmother and everybody when I first had a phone, and they were complaining about one of my cousins was always on their phone, and they're like, he's so antisocial. He's texting all the time. It was back when there were flip phones. It's like, he's antisocial. I'm like, no, he isn't. He's here at dinner, and he's keeping a conversation up with you guys, but he's also texting his friends. He's actually, if anything, he's metasocial. He's proto-social. He is extra social because he's socializing in two environments at once. Now, can you miss out on what's around you because you're stuck in it? Absolutely. That's not necessarily required. And you could send a message like, hey, are you going to be here? Or the party's starting. Love you, bye. And then back to where you were. How is that different from when you used to go make a fucking phone call? Hey, get off the phone. I'm inviting them, and I have something to say, and I got work tomorrow, or whatever. Like, well, how is that any different except its availability and its frequency? Sorry, the DSA is opposed, and I agree with fight big data, socialism for AI. It doesn't apply, Rachel. Socialism is not applicable for AI in any way, any more than capitalism is. That's the thing they're running into. These are monetary trade systems based on structures that have nothing to do with artificial intelligence and the system that AI will eventually create. Go watch Star Trek. Like, it's just the idea that trade has to occur. I mean, using currency is an absurdity. It's something, it'll be a window into human life. But like, everybody who's looking backwards for a system that fits what's happening now is the problem. Just telling you. It's a, let's see, it is route to Texas company like people. You're born. I'm there in the middle of that. So I mean, this is a great conversation. It can go on forever. But here's what I am saying is that even if you don't plan on using AI for anything at work or something like that, get used to what it's like to interact with it in the same way that most of us know how to text, even if we don't do it very often. Throwing that out there. Hi. Oh, thank you. I'm still on. I'll be out in a second. I'm wrapping up. I'll come out. I'll eat it with you because I'll sit down with you and have a little thank you. My girl's bringing me food, trying to lure me out of the room. All right. Much love. I will see you guys this afternoon. And a big portion of this will, is an ongoing conversation that we need to have. Because the Trumps of the world are ticks on the back of a dying dog. Shitty analogy, but it's apt. Just telling you. And remember, fear not.